We'll start with our prayers. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Sahana Bhavatu Sahanu Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Asato ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavibhiriditam kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadaatatam Bhuvi Gnanti Ye Bhurida Janaha. Let we be protected, let we be nourished, let we strive with energy and vigor. Let our study be enlightening and not give rise to hostility. Om peace, peace, peace. Lead us to truth and not to untruth. Lead us to enlightenment and not ignorance. Lead us to immortality and not death. Let this self-manifest Atman grow in me. Om peace, peace, peace. Your nectar-like words and warm and inspiring life stories, eulogized by learned sages, are indeed eradicator of shoots of ignorance. These are auspicious to hear and propitious to inculcate in one's own life. Those who take these words to the world are indeed great benefactor of the world. So we are studying Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that a band of baul singers, minstrel, they came, sang, danced, and went away. Nobody could recognize them. Sometimes you would say it is achine gach. Achine gach means unrecognized plant. Generally, we see so many plants, but some plants we don't recognize. Apparently, they are also plants. So, incarnations, they come, they live like us, they have their being in this world like us, but actually they are a different class of people, different class. To understand this, one has to cultivate purity. And they also go through the same struggle that we go, because they come to show us the way, how one should proceed in this life and how one should achieve the highest goal of life. So here one disciple is Narendranath, and how Sri Ramakrishna educated him to become Swami Vivekananda. So this is the story. As we know that Narendra had a background. His father was an attorney in the High Court of Calcutta or Supreme Court, whatever that time. And then he was influenced by various cultures, various philosophies that we have already read. Now, please go ahead.
All right.
Yeah.
Number 5. Narendra describes his days. with the master in Dakshineshwar. Narendra later cherished the sweet memory of those blessed days with the master in Dakshineshwar. They filled his heart with joy throughout his life. Narendra recalled, "It's extremely difficult to describe to others how joyful were the days we spent with the master. We still wonder at how the master was constantly training us through play, merriment, and trivial daily activities, thus forming our spiritual lives without our knowledge. When a powerful wrestler trains a boy to wrestle, he controls himself and makes his student appear to be as strong as he is. He awakens his student's self-confidence by feigning to overpower him only with great effort and sometimes allowing himself to be defeated. The master adopted this method with us. He always saw the whole ocean in a drop of water. In other words, he saw infinite God in each individual. Because he dwelt in the state of Bhavamukha, he knew how each person's latent spiritual power would manifest itself in the fullness of time. Keeping that bright picture in mind, he would speak highly of us and encourage us. Lest we miss the highest goal of life by becoming entangled in worldly desires, he carefully observed every action of ours and kept us under control with his instructions. But we had no idea that he was watching us so closely and had such control over us. This was his unique technique of training his disciples and molding our lives.
Yeah, nowadays, the problem is, it is very difficult to tell anything to anyone. They are so sentimental, so touchy. One has to be careful to tell anything for their own good. But there Sri Ramakrishna is to train his own disciples, and sometimes with love, sometimes with even scolding. So there are special kind of gurus who teaches his disciples with all means. And Swamiji later, when he returned from the West, he said, and people honored him, but he said, I'm the same Naren who walked in the path of this city, metropolis. And also I'm the same boy who used to sit at the feet of Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna at Dakshineshwar. It is because the love that Sri Ramakrishna bestowed on him. We all remember our childhood days, even our school days. It is nostalgia to us. But think of that. Who is the world teacher? And he spent his formative period with Sri Ramakrishna. So this is very special that we can understand. And not only that, his urge to realize the self, the truth, that was uppermost in his life that time. And with that desire in heart, he ran to Sri Ramakrishna. So that is very important. And lots of incidents also happened during that time. So we go ahead. Yes.
Once I felt that although my mind was concentrated to some extent during meditation, it wasn't going any deeper. I asked him what I should do. He told me what he'd done in similar circumstances and gave me additional instructions. I remember that when I meditated in Dakshineshwar, late at night, the whistle of the nearby Alambazar jute mill would disturb me and distract my mind. When I reported this to the master, he advised me to concentrate on the sound of the whistle. I followed his advice and derived much benefit from it.
Go
On
ahead.
another occasion, I found it difficult to forget my body completely during meditation and concentrate my mind wholly on the ideal. When I told him of my problem, he mentioned how Totapuri had told him to concentrate between the eyebrows while practicing samadhi according to Vedanta. He sharply pressed a fingernail into a spot between my eyebrows and said, "Now concentrate on this painful sensation." I found that I could easily concentrate on that sensation as long as I liked, and that during that period, I completely lost awareness of other parts of my body, which then caused me no distraction.
Yeah. Sometimes he used to meditate. And as you know, Dakshineshwar, even that whole country, there, lots of mosquitoes are there, and especially in Dakshineshwar. And later, Girish Chandra Ghosh told that I saw that so many mosquitoes, as if a blanket of mosquito was sitting on his body, but he was not mindful about the body. So such was his concentration. Yeah, go ahead.
The isolated Panchavati, where the master had performed his sadhana, was the most suitable place for meditation. But in addition to our spiritual practices, we spent a good deal of time there in sheer fun and merrymaking. The master sometimes joined us, intensifying our joy. There we used to run, climb trees, swing from the rope-like Madhavi vines, and sometimes have a picnic. During our first picnic, the master noticed that I'd cooked the food, but he partook of it nonetheless. I knew that he couldn't eat food unless it was cooked by Brahmins, so I was planning to obtain prasad from the Kali temple for him. But he prevented me, saying, "There's no harm in my taking cooked food from a pure and sattvic person such as you." He ignored my repeated objections and ate the food I'd cooked that day.
Yes, go ahead.
6. Bhavanath and Narendra's friends from Baranagar. Bhavanath Chattopadhyay, a handsome and devout youth, stayed with the master in Dakshineshwar for a while. During that time, he became acquainted with Narendra, and a close friendship developed between them. Bhavanath was very dear to the master because of his humility, modesty, simplicity, faith, and devotion. Observing his soft feminine nature and his affection for Narendra, the master sometimes teased him, saying, "Perhaps you were Narendra's life companion in a previous incarnation." Bhavanath lived at Baranagar, and whenever he had an opportunity, he took Narendra to his home and fed him. Satkari Lahiri and Dasarati Sanyal were Bhavanath's neighbors. Both of them were close friends of Narendra, and Dasarati was a classmate as well. They all spent days and nights together whenever Narendra was available.
Swami,
Yes.
I have a question about Bhavanath. I've read that, I think I remember Sri Ramakrishna once even saying that he was an Ishwara Koti. Certainly he spoke very highly of him. And yet, when we look at his life, he not only, we see him becoming a regular householder, and Sri Ramakrishna sort of changing his opinion about him. How is that possible? How does that, I don't quite understand that.
Okay. In this world, it is called world of Maya. And what is Maya? Aghatana, ghatana, patiyasi. Some incidents happen, and we don't know why it happens. Even Purna was Ishvara Koti, but he also married. So it shows that marriage is not against it. And in various ways, they are supporting Sri Ramakrishna, even becoming a householder. So even at the advent of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you see so many grihasthas, like householders, they were very pious devotees. And later life, Bhavanath, he also was a pious householder devotee. But of course, what Sri Ramakrishna thought that he'll become like a companion, monastic companion, but that, it is not that clear. Even one Paramahamsa, like, he also was under the spell of Mahamaya. And he was, even Sri Ramakrishna warned him not to be indulged in companionship of women for him. But he did it, and he also slipped from his path. This happens, but not necessarily that they are totally lost. Some, as yesterday we were talking about prarabdha karma. So this happens because of prarabdha karma. Some prarabdha, unfinished work, is still there. So this happens. That is why one should be very careful. Sri Ramakrishna would say, sadhu savdhan. Dear one, be careful. Those who are walking on the righteous path, they are to be extra cautious, not to be entangled. Of course, those who are who have entered grihastha life, they are to perform their duties. But it does not mean that they should be steeped in it. So that is what we understand. Before that, there was a point that Sri Ramakrishna could not eat food touched by impure people. Food has got three kinds of impurities. One is jati dosha. So like jati dosha means different kind of food is, some food are impure by nature. And some are gunadosha, like what quality of that food, or contamination, some contamination also, that's also like if hair falls in the food, that should not be taken. And similarly, there is if someone impure, he touches the food, because by that one imbibes those qualities. So these are the defects of food that one should not take, especially those who are walking on righteous path. But what happened, gradually this became a fad in India, and don't touchism came. So that was extreme, but behind that, this is the principle. One should follow the principle. That is why one should not, even for monks, they should not beg from same family. They used to beg at least 5 or 7 houses, a little morsel, so that this contamination of touch is not there. And that is why bhiksha is very pure. But as of now, in modern age, it is difficult. So one has to adjust oneself, as mother said, "Jakhun jamon takhun tamon." As the situation prompts, one should behave accordingly. So that is one point there. And regarding Bhavanath Chattopadhyay, yes, but he lived a good grihastha life. And he was not solitary. There were so many grihastha, and all were good devotees. Okay. Dasharathi became a very nice, very good poet. So they were friends, yes.
Narendra would thus spend a few hours or a day or two with his friends at Baranagar when he visited Dakshineshwar, or sometimes when he was specifically invited. 7. While at Baranagar, Narendra receives news of his father's death. In the early part of 1884, sometime before he had received the result of his BA examination, a significant change took place in Narendra's life. Due to overwork, Vishwanath's body had been exhausted for some time. One night at about 10 o'clock, he suffered a heart attack and died. That day, Narendra's friends had invited him to Baranagar. He arrived in the afternoon and sang devotional songs until 11 p.m. After dinner, they all lay in the same room and talked late into the night. Narendra's friend Hemali arrived at about 2 a.m. to give him the terrible news. Immediately, they returned to Calcutta together. 8. The tragic change in the situation of Narendra's family. After returning home, Narendra performed the customary rites for his father. When the time came to look into his father's financial affairs, he found them to be in an extremely wretched condition. His father had been spending more than he earned and had left nothing but debt. Narendra's relatives, who had benefited from his father's generosity, became hostile and even tried to evict his family from their home. Although his family had practically no income, its 6 or 7 members had to be supported. Narendra, who had been brought up in comfort, was now completely at a loss. Desperately, he began searching for a job, but he met with disappointment everywhere. When times become bad, a person can achieve nothing even after 100 attempts.
Yeah, you see, there is a sutra in Yoga Sutra. Yoga Sutra says, Bhogapa Vargartham Drishyam, Bhoga and Apavarga. So in this world, it's a wonderful school. Here, in the beginning, you'll get some enjoyment. But in course of your travel, you'll get some blows. And those blows are very important. Because those blows are intended to bring you back to the track. You know, it is said, Sukh ke mathe seal pare, jab naam hriday se jaye. When you are in good days, or you are happy and you are enjoying this world, Sukh ke mathe seal pare, jo naam hriday se jaye. Balihari we din dukh ke, jab pal pal naam ritaye. But when you are in difficult situation, then always you are reciting God's name. Oh God, please save me, please save me. So this difficult situation, such difficult situation brings us closer to our real nature. So these are extraordinary opportunity to learn, and that happened in the life of Narendranath also. More or less, we all experience such things. When we are happy, we don't bother about anything. But when we get a blow, then only we remember, oh, this world is illusory. This is only temporary. And we should not be satisfied with this. Let me find out what is true behind this. What is the truth? So this happened in his life also. And not only that, it was multiplied because of the debt. And also he did not get a job. And that situation was inevitable, as Sri Ramakrishna later explained, that since you don't admit mother, this will happen. When you are playing, you are in the playing field, you have to obey the rules of the playing field. So when you are in this world, you have to be submissive to God, personal God. So there it is mother. That's why Sri Ramakrishna told that this will happen, but if you pray to mother, she will help you. So anyway, let us go ahead.
3 or 4 months after the death of his father, there was no end to his distress and no relief from his poverty. Narendra did not see even the slightest ray of hope in his life. It is doubtful that he had ever been so engulfed by darkness. He sometimes described this period to us. 9. Narendra describes his difficulties. He struggles to find a job and his rich friends scorn him. Narendra related, even before the prescribed period of mourning had passed, I began running hither and thither in search of a job. Dizzy from lack of food, I went from office to office barefoot in the blazing sun, carrying my application papers. Some days, 1 or 2 close friends accompanied me out of sympathy. Other days, I went alone. But everywhere I met with rejection. That early experience taught me that unselfish sympathy is rare in this world. There's no place here for the poor or the weak. Even those who only a short time ago would have regarded themselves fortunate to do me a favor now made wry faces and were reluctant to help me, though they could easily have done so had they wished. When faced by all this, the world sometimes seemed to be the handiwork of the devil. I remember that one day when I was walking around in the sun, the soles of my feet became blistered. I was completely exhausted and had to sit down in the shade of the Okterloni monument, now Sahid Minar, on the Maidan. A couple of friends were with me, or perhaps they met me there. To console me, one of them sang, "Here blows the wind, the breath of Brahman. It is his grace we feel." When I heard that song, I felt as if someone were violently beating me on the head. Thinking of my mother and brother's helpless condition, I was filled with resentment and despair. "Be quiet," I told him. "That fanciful nonsense is all right for people living in luxury, people who have no idea what hunger is, people whose nearest and dearest aren't wearing rags and starving. Previously, this song sounded true and beautiful to me, but now I've seen what life is really like, and that song is nothing but a relentless mockery."
Yeah. So this must happen. He was to be world teacher. World teacher means he is not only teachers of her rung of people, but those who are poor, those who were lowly. He was supposed to teach them also. And later he did the same thing. He said, feel my brethren, feel for the poor, feel for the lowly. So this should come until or unless we go through such experiences. We cannot feel that way. And later in his itinerant days also, when he was traveling length and breadth of India, traveling in India. So that time he also many times had no food. For 3 days, at least 2-3 times it happened. So he felt for the poor. And this experience is important in his life. That when the bad days arrive, then nobody would help you. And that is why he was so compassionate. Yes, go ahead. The song is Bhaviche Kripa Ghano Brahman Ishas Pavane. So that was the song, like Brahman is breathing out of compassion, and that is flowing, and that is glowing everywhere in this creation. Yeah.
Okay. 10. Crushed by poverty. I dare say that my friend was terribly hurt by my words. How could he understand the grinding poverty that had made me utter them? Some mornings I'd get up to find that there wasn't enough food for all of us, so I'd tell my mother, a friend has invited me to lunch, and leave home. On such days, I had nothing to eat, for I had no money in my pocket. I was too proud to tell anyone about this. Sometimes my wealthy friends would invite me to their houses and pleasure gardens to sing at their parties as before. Unable to avoid them, I sometimes went and tried to entertain them. I had no inclination to tell them how I felt, and they did not try to find out how I was getting along. Rarely would a very few ask, "Why do you look so pale and sad today?" But only one friend ever found out, and not from me, how things really were. He used to send money to my mother anonymously from time to time. I'm eternally indebted to him.
I think it was M. Mahendranath Gupta. He was so generous. He used to support many monks and even householders. Yes, go ahead.
11. Temptation from women. Some of my boyhood friends whose characters had become dissipated in their youth, and who had resorted to unscrupulous means to earn money, now became aware of my poverty and tried to drag me into their company. I noticed that those among them who had suddenly fallen into difficult circumstances as I had, and were forced to adopt an ignoble path for their livelihood, actually had empathy for me. Mahamaya, the great enchantress, took advantage of my circumstances and tried to snare me with various temptations. A wealthy woman had been infatuated with me for a long time. When she found an opportunity, she sent a message inviting me to end my poverty by accepting her along with her wealth. Disgusted, I sternly rejected her offer. When another woman approached me with a similar proposal, I told her, "Look, you've wasted your life seeking the pleasures of your worthless body. Now death is in front of you. Have you done anything to prepare yourself? Shun these filthy desires and call on God."
Yes, such things also happen. So Narendra had to go through all these experiences. Yes.
12. His mother scolds him for chanting God's name. In spite of all these sufferings, I neither lost faith in the existence of God, nor did I doubt the truth of the saying, "God is merciful." Every morning I repeated the Lord's name as I got out of bed, and then resumed my search for a job. One day, as I was getting out of bed, my mother overheard my prayer from the next room. She said bitterly, "Keep quiet, boy. You've been repeating the Lord's name since you were a child. What has he done for you?" These words hurt me terribly. Stunned, I asked myself, does God really exist? And if he does he listen to our fervent prayers? Why do I pray so much and get no answer? Why is there so much woe in his benign kingdom? How could he be merciful when his creation is so full of evil? Afflicted with the sufferings of others, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar once remarked, "If God is compassionate and gracious, why then did millions of people die for want of a morsel of food during the terrible famine?" This harsh and taunting remark reverberated in my ears. My heart was filled with wounded feelings towards God, and at this opportune moment, doubt occupied my mind.
Yes, go ahead.
13. His feelings wounded, Narendra adopts an atheistic outlook. It was against my nature to do anything secretly. Even as a child, I was never able to conceal even the most trivial thought or action from fear or for any other reason. So it wasn't surprising that I now began aggressively to tell people that God did not exist, and that even if he did exist, it was of no use calling on him because it produced no results. Of course, the rumor soon spread that I'd become an atheist and that I was drinking, mixing with people of bad character, and visiting houses of ill repute. Those lies made me all the more rebellious and aggressive. I began telling everyone, even those who didn't ask my opinion, that I had no objection to any man's drinking wine or going to a brothel if it would help him to forget his hard lot in this world of pain. And I added that I would do these things myself without the least regard for public opinion if I believed they would make me happy even for a single moment. 14.
Incident, yeah. Go ahead.
The devotees believe Narendra has fallen, but the
Okay,
master...
Just a minute. You know, this is what our general thinking is, that God should be at our command. Whenever we pray, God should come running and help us. This is a wrong idea. So, but people of ordinary status, that is the thinking. Mother said, but even if you are a devotee, things will happen which is not favorable. But you are to forbear. You have to continue your journey. Rather bless those bad times, because that time you are closer to God. You know, like there is a story that God showed the footprint to a devotee. And then the devotee asked, "Sir, in some portion that I see, there are double foot marks, yours and some other. And in some places I see only one. Why so?" He said, "It is yours footmark. And whenever you have difficulties, then I took you to my lap. That is why you see only a single pair of footprints." So this happens whenever we are in difficult situation. We pray and God takes us to his lap. So we should not doubt about it. And later, Swamiji also realized that those difficult situations are blessings in disguise. As I just now told, that bhoga and apavarga. Bhoga means enjoyment and apavarga means release from this snare. So both happens in drishya. Say, suppose you are looking at beautiful scenery. You cannot look forever. After certain time, first you will see, oh, wonderful. But after certain time, you will be fed up with that. So this is nature. It should not attract us for eternity. So this, all kinds of situations are actually great teaching incidents. And that is what was happening in Narendranath. And you know, his mother also said, "Why you utter name of God?" That is normal. When one is in distress, one can think that way. Does it mean that they totally stopped uttering the name of God? Not like that. But that happens. You know, if you love someone and if you don't get it something, then you have every right to feel angry for it. So anyway, let us go ahead.
14. The devotees believe Narendra has fallen, but the master does not. Such news travels fast, It didn't take long for a completely distorted version of my words to reach the master and his devotees in Calcutta. When some of them came to visit me to learn the truth, they made it obvious that they believed at least part of what they had heard, if not all. I was bitterly wounded when I realized that they could think so little of me. I told them that it was cowardice to believe in God merely from fear of hell. Quoting Hume, Mill, Bain, Comte, and other Western philosophers, I fiercely argued that there's no evidence for the existence of God. And so they went away, convinced more than ever of my downfall, as I afterwards learned. In my defiant mood, this actually pleased me. Then it occurred to me that perhaps they would tell the master about this and that he would believe them. I felt terrible pain at the thought, but then I said to myself, let him believe it. If he does, I can't help it. Others' good or bad opinions are worth nothing. I later discovered that the master had heard all these lies about me. He made no comment at first, but when Babanath tearfully said to him, "Sir, we never dreamed that Narendra would sink so low," the master cried out excitedly, "Silence, you scoundrel. Mother has told me that he would never do such things. If you talk like this anymore, I won't allow you in my presence again."
Okay, now see, Bhavanath is doing his duty. He is reporting about Narendranath. I give this illustration. What is an incarnation? Incarnation is like a white paper. Now, how to depict incarnation? So we need to know the circumstances and this his interaction with devotees. They are like black dots. So black dots, then gradually we can see the picture. See here Sri Ramakrishna, who totally believed in Narendra. And he did not believe all the false stories. So all the players surrounding him, they have certain play, and they were doing, say like we have just before this we have heard Yogananda Maharaj, Yogin, how he doubted Sri Ramakrishna and how he was ashamed of that doubt. So all these are various incidents that clarifies what Sri Ramakrishna is. So through interaction, the picture is clear. So Bhavanath also played his part. And this is also a part that those Sri Ramakrishna is praising, and like Naren and Bhavanath are like husband and wife, if they were of opposite gender. But ultimately, he could not continue. But all these are various aspects of the incarnation. So this, he was playing his own part. Yes. Yes, go ahead.
15. Narendra's terrible anguish. But what was this atheism of mine? Nothing but egotism and pride. The experiences I'd had since childhood, and more important, since meeting the master, rose vividly in my mind in bright colors. I said to myself, God certainly does exist, and there's definitely a way to attain him. Otherwise, what is life for? What is it worth? The path to God has to be found, no matter how great the struggle. Days passed, and my mind continued to vacillate between doubt and certainty. Thus, I had no respite from my emotional turmoil and financial woes. 16. Narendra finds peace in a wonderful vision. Summer passed and the rainy season began. I continued looking for work as before. One night, as I returned home, I was drenched with rain. I hadn't eaten all day, my legs were tired, and my mind was even more exhausted than my body. At length, I grew so exhausted that I couldn't go a single step farther, and I lay down motionless on the open veranda of a neighbor's house. Perhaps I lost external consciousness for a while. I remember that all kinds of thoughts and pictures went through my mind, and I had no power to ignore or concentrate upon any of them. Then I suddenly felt that Providence was lifting up screen after screen in my mind, and that all the problems that had been tormenting me, where is the harmony between God's justice and his mercy? Why does evil exist within a benign creation? All were resolved. I was beside myself with joy. When I later continued my walk home, I found that there was not a bit of fatigue in my body, and that my mind was filled with infinite peace and strength. The day was just breaking.
See, this situation happened when all the circumstances were created. Then only one can have that joy. That's why all the sadhanas are done. Buddha used to fast, but then he realized that Madhyam Pantha, Madhya Pantha, that is, and then he followed that. But one day he decided, Ihasane Shushati me shariram tavasti mansam, let this body be dried here, and all the bones and muscles be dried here. I'm not getting up from this seat anymore. So this happens when you a situation is created, then only you understand the reality. So in the case of Narendranath, that was not only one time, that happened many times. Even when he was traveling in India, many times he fainted. But then from within came this strength. Atmaiva hi prabhavate na jah kadachit. This material cannot have that strength. It has no power over Atman. And then again he walked. So this is to invoke the strength that is within us. And for that, this situation, one should go through such kind of situations, so that the strength, that inner strength, is manifested. Yes.
17. Narendra resolves to become a monk. The master's mysterious treatment of him at Dakshineshwar. I now became absolutely indifferent to the praise or blame of the world. I was firmly convinced that I wasn't born to earn money, support a family, or seek worldly enjoyment like others. I was secretly preparing to renounce the world as my grandfather had done. When the day arrived on which I had decided to start life as a wandering monk, I heard that the master was coming to a devotee's house in Calcutta. I thought this was very fortunate. I should see my guru before I left home forever. But when I met the master, he told me imperiously, "You must come with me to Dakshineshwar today." I offered various excuses, but he wouldn't accept any of them. I had to return with him. We didn't speak much in the carriage. When we got to Dakshineshwar, I sat in his room for some time with other devotees. Then the master went into a state of ecstasy. Suddenly, he came over to me, took my hand in his, and sang, with tears pouring down his face, "I'm afraid to speak. I'm afraid not to speak, for the fear rises in my mind that I shall lose you."
So this one is in Bengali. Katha kohite darai, na kohite darai. Mone shandoh hoy, buji tomay harai. So if this we can experience. If you scold someone, then naturally love him. So mother creates and mother bestows love. Mother scolds, mother also bestows love. So here, through Sri Ramakrishna, the divine grace was showered on Narendranath. And that is why later it will happen how he approaches mother. Yes.
18. At the master's request, Narendra cancels his plan to renounce home. All this time, I'd fought back the strong emotion I was feeling. I could do so no longer, and my tears poured down like his. I felt sure that the master knew all about my plans. The others were astonished to see us behaving in this way. After the master had returned to normal consciousness, one of the devotees asked him what was the matter. He smiled and answered, "It's just something between the two of us." That night, he sent the others away. Calling me to him, he said in a voice choked with emotion, "I know you've come to the world to do mother's work. You can never lead a worldly life. But for my sake, stay with your family as long as I'm alive." As he said this, he began to cry again.
See the love that was bestowed by Sri Ramakrishna. He knew everything, but he did not come to his rescue. Because this situation he should come through. He should go through this situation and then experience that joy. So this is the blessing. So we should not curse our bad days. Rather, those are wonderful days. Yes.
19. Narendra resorts to divine intervention to end his poverty and implores the master for help. The master advises him to go to the Kali temple and pray. I took leave of him the next day and returned home. 1,000 concerns for my family occupied my mind, and with renewed energy, I set myself to finding employment. I got a temporary job in an attorney's office translating some books, which brought just enough income to live on. I couldn't find a permanent job, so I had no fixed income with which to maintain my mother and brothers. It occurred to me that God grants the master's prayers, so I should ask him to pray on my behalf that my family's financial crisis would be overcome. I was sure that he wouldn't refuse for my sake. I rushed to Dakshineshwar and importuned him, saying, "Sir, you must speak to the Divine Mother so that my family's financial problems can be solved." The master replied, "I can't make such demands. Why don't you go and ask the mother yourself? You don't accept the mother. That is why you have all these troubles." I replied, "I don't know the mother. Please tell the mother for me. You have to, or I won't let you go." The master said affectionately, "My boy, I've prayed many times to the mother to remove your suffering, but she doesn't listen to my prayers because you don't care for her. All right, today is Tuesday, a day especially sacred to mother. Go to the temple tonight and pray. Mother will grant you whatever you ask for. I promise you that. My mother is the embodiment of pure consciousness, the power of Brahman, and she has produced this universe by mere will. What can she not do if she wishes?"
Yeah. Continue.
20. Narendra has a vision of the Divine Mother and forgets the world. When the master said that, I was fully convinced that all my suffering would cease as soon as I prayed to her. I waited impatiently for night. At 9 p.m., the master told me to go to the temple. On my way, I was possessed by a kind of drunkenness and began to stagger. I firmly believed that I would see the mother and hear her voice. I forgot everything else and became absorbed in that thought alone. When I entered the temple, I saw that the mother was actually conscious and living, the fountainhead of infinite love and beauty. Overwhelmed with love and devotion, I bowed down to her again and again, praying, Mother, grant me discrimination, grant me detachment, grant me divine knowledge and devotion. Grant that I may see you without obstruction, always. My heart was filled with peace. The universe disappeared from my mind, and the mother alone occupied it completely.
Continue.
21. Thrice he goes to the Kali temple to pray for financial help, and thrice he fails. As soon as I returned to the master, he asked, Hello, did you pray to the mother to relieve your family's needs? I was taken aback and replied, No, sir, I forgot. What shall I do now? He said, Go again and say that prayer. Again, I went to the temple. But when I stood before the mother, I was again overwhelmed and forgot my intention. I repeatedly bowed down to her and prayed for knowledge and devotion. When I returned to the master, he smiled and asked, Well, have you prayed for your need this time? Startled, I said, No, sir, I couldn't. As soon as I saw the mother, I was overwhelmed by a divine power and forgot everything. I asked only for knowledge and devotion. What's to be done now? The master said, Silly boy, couldn't you control yourself a little and remember your prayer? Go back again and tell mother what you want. Be quick. I went a third time, but as soon as I entered the temple, I felt a sense of deep shame. I thought, what a trifling thing I am asking of the mother. As the master says, it's like being graciously received by a king and then asking for gourds and pumpkins. It's that kind of stupidity. Am I so small-minded? In shame and remorse, I bowed down to her again and again and said, Mother, I want nothing but knowledge and devotion. When I came out of the,
Go ahead.
When I came out of the temple, I thought that the master must have played a trick on me. I'd gone to the mother thrice, but hadn't been able to ask for what I needed. I went to the master and insisted. It was certainly you who made me intoxicated and forgetful. Now you must at least say a prayer that my mother and brothers will never lack for food and clothing. He said, My child, you know I could never offer a prayer like that for anyone. The words wouldn't leave my mouth. I told you that you'd get whatever you asked mother for, but you couldn't do that either. You aren't destined to have worldly happiness. What am I to do about that? I said firmly, No, sir, I won't let you go. You must say the prayer for my sake. I'm certain my family will be freed from want if only you say they will. Thus I went on importuning him until at last he said, All right, they will never lack for plain food and clothing.
Yeah, so here is wonderful incident that happened. And as you know, in Ayurveda system, one has to fast, then take the medicine. Why? Then it works well. So that situation was created for Narendranath so that he realizes the truth. And also, Sri Ramakrishna put him to test what he asks for. And he asked for devotion, knowledge, discrimination, because that is what is natural in him. Even Sri Ramakrishna could not bless anyone imparting these things, worldly things. And as Sri Ramakrishna said, that you have no worldly worldly joy. But here, there is no joy. It is better that we understand sooner than later. It is in the guise of joy, misery enters into the house. So one should be very careful about it. There is no joy in this world, in senses. And it is better that we understand early. And it is good that it happened in the life of Narendranath. And mother is so gracious. Mother is ready. And in that situation, Narendranath felt it is mother. Mother is filled with everything. Everywhere it's mother and mother alone. So such incident happened. And we are so fortunate that actually we also go through such experiences, but we don't understand the import of it. Through such lives, then we understand why we are put to test and we face such difficulties. Time is? What is the time? Oh. So we'll stop here. It's a wonderful incident that happened in the life of Narendra, transforming. But Sri Ramakrishna blessed him. And not only that, that night, he learned from he learned from Sri Ramakrishna that he requested Sri Ramakrishna, could you please teach me that song? What is that song? Amar Ma Tam Hitara. Oh mother, you are the Redeemer. And he learned that song the whole night. And he was sleeping in the morning. And people came to see Sri Ramakrishna, and Sri Ramakrishna would say, this is Naren. Naren sang this song the whole night. And he accepted Mother Kali. Is it not good? So everybody said, yes, very good. So this is very important incident when Narendranath accepted Mother Kali. Because if you are to play in this world, you are to admit the referee. Otherwise, you are out of the game. So mother is the personal God in that form. And mother is so blissful. Okay, we say our prayer. Oh, mother. Oh, you have. Yes, please go ahead.
I had a question that
Yes, please.
how can we recognize an enlightened person in our surrounding?
How can I recognize? You'll recognize. That comes from within. So first one has to see the person who you are thinking, whether he has a personal axe to grind, he has some selfish end. Is he money making? Or is he after name and fame? So these are signs and symptoms. And he must know the heart of scriptures. That Guru should be like that. And he should know the heart of
Viveka Juravadi, verse 33, 5 qualities.
Yeah. What is that shloka?
So, Stotriya.
Shrotriya Brahmanishta.
Yeah,
Shrotriya and also Brahmanishta.
Shostriya Abrigjana, Akama Hata, Ya Brahma Vittama, Brahmanu Parata, Santa, Nirindhana, Ivanala.
Iva Anala. So Abrijina, that means he's not, he has no selfish end. And he's not running after name and name and fame. And secondly, he must have the knowledge of scripture, the heart of scripture. He may not Shrotriya Brahmanishta. He's steeped in the divine. So these are the
And then there is Ahetuka, Daya Sindhu, Bandhur, Anatmanam, Anatmatam Satam.
But not to worry about it. You are to be disciple first, then you'll get it. So one should cultivate Shantadanta. That means cultivate that he is pure in heart and he is prayerful. Then God arranges such teacher. So not to worry about teacher, as Narendranath also was searching and he found in Sri Ramakrishna. If you are such disciple, you'll get such people, such guru also. Right?
Swamiji,
Yes.
one question, Swami.
Yes, please.
Swami Vivekananda ji at many places said, Lord help me. And he was praying also
Not-
in India, in US, about Lord, ki Lord was always helping me. Here in this episode, he has found that mother is the embodiment of the pure consciousness. So what happened afterwards, after this incident in his life?
Yeah, this opened his floodgate, and his family never suffered coarse food and normal clothing, simple clothing. And he gradually flourished into Swami Vivekananda. That happened. So God helps everyone. Why? Then what God is for? So Sri Ramakrishna would say, when the sick disciples came, he said, God is very merciful. Sri Ramakrishna said, is it? If someone begets children, he must look after. It's not that neighbors will look after those children begotten by someone. So, Lord helps us. Not only he helped Narendranath, he helps whosoever depends on him. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janah pariyupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam bhamyam. Only thing, one should totally surrendered. One should take refuge at his feet. Then yoga and kshema, he'll carry. This is his promise that I'll carry. What is yoga? What you don't have and what you want to have. And secondly, what you have, he'll protect that. Lots of stories are there. That Tulsidas was a great devotee. So he had little possession, but he was not mindful about it. He was always chanting the name of God. And he was composing Ramcharitmanas. But a thief made a plan that he'll steal all whatever he possesses. So he came in the night and he saw two young boys with arrows and bow. They are guarding and they are going around. And so he could not steal. So second day also he tried. Third day also he tried. But all the time he saw that they are guarding Tulsidas's hut. Then the next day he came and fell down at the feet of Tulsidas. Said, Sir, who are those two boys? Always guard this place. I came to steal your possessions, but I could not. Then Tulsidas could understand who those two boys are, Rama and Lakshman. And then he said, oh, my brother, you take away everything. For my sake, my little belonging, God is guarding me. I don't want these things. I don't want to trouble God. So this is, so many other stories are also there. And it's not stories, these are facts. If you surrender yourself to God, then God will take care of you. And that happened in the life of Narendranath, and that happens to all of our lives. Only thing, we are not so sincere. We forget him. We forget our real self. So, Narendranath was not like us. He was totally dedicated and he incarnated to do mother's job work. And he did it. Here also, many times, he had difficult situation, but always mother protected him. Thank you.
Okay.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamidachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tatsat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. There is a beautiful incident of Jagannath Mishra. You know, Jagannath Mishra was commenting on Gita, and he found this, that Ananyas Chintayantu Mam Ye Jana Paryupasate. He who worships me without caring for anything, I carry whatever is required for him and I protect whatever he possesses. So he said, it is sacrilegious that God carries for devotee. So he cut that place. Vahamyam, like dadamyam. Vahamyam, that means I carry. He said, no, I give. So he cut that place and put dadamyam. You know, it happens that time all scriptures were handwritten. So people who would get a copy, they thought it must be a mistake. So he cut that place, Bahamyam as Dadamyam. I carry, no, that's God carries. How can we even imagine? It is sacrilegious to think that God carries. So he cut it and put it, Dadamyam, I give. And that day his wife said, we don't have rice, etc. Rice, can you kindly procure rice, vegetable, etc. So he went there. But while going, he was so thoughtful, he forgot everything. And a little boy came, young boy, with all the articles, the rice and vegetables, etc. And the mother said, who sent this? Then boy said, it's a Panditji, Jagannath Mishra. He sent this. So, and mother was very affectionate to that boy because he was so calmly and so beautiful, so handsome that boy was. So he said, my boy, please sit down here and have some water. So she offered that. But while offering, she saw that, there is some cut. He said, who did it? It's by, Jagannath Mishra and your husband, they did it. Oh, is it? He's so heartless. And then after that, boy departed. And then when Jagannath Mishra came, he said, you are getting old. How could you touch that boy and cut his, on his face? He said, what happened? He could not understand. That you sent all the articles, he carried everything, he was panting, he put it, and I saw a cut there. I offered some water. And he said, I asked, who did it? He said, your husband. Jagannath Mishra could understand. He said, oh my. Then again, he was repentant and he corrected that place. In place of Dadamyam, he kept it Vahamyam. I carry myself, because he carried. So such, incidents happened in the lives of great devotees. Only thing, when we are engrossed in this world, we forget about it. But if you depend on him, I can certainly tell that it is literally true that he carries. Hari Om, Jai Ma,
Pranaman.
Namaskar.
Pranam Maharaj.
Namaste, Namaste, Hari Om.
Pranam.
Namaste.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Namaste, Namaste, Hari Om.
Thank you.